All right, let's do dashboards because you added this because that's what ToolTime's all about today. Same guy that reviewed Headlamp last week did Octane, which I think is older. Yeah, older than Headlamp. Ships as a Go binary. You can run it in your own environment, and you get a pretty cool dashboard. And it does plugins. It does all the things that you want from a. I know what. Again, the reason my familiarity with Octane comes from Aqua again. That when we did Starboard and Trivia were plugged into Octane first before any other type of dashboard, and it was pretty cool and easy to use. So, did you check this out? And do you see as we did Headlamp last week?
Yeah.
What's your take?
And I saw Rich post it, and I also thought, hey, I have Headlamp up here. Maybe we should just do one dashboard show where we just install all the dashboards and see, and then have a ranking. I don't know if you've seen the YouTube ones where it's like S, A, B, D, E, F, right, of our dashboards. But yeah, I thought it was just interesting. I put it in there because there are so many dashboards, and there's different visualizations. I think it's worthwhile to show because Rich does point it out that the dashboards accomplish different things, right? The workflow is different, the setup is different. So,
it is.
Don't Headlamp probably takes the win for me. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
I don't know if Rich is biased when he writes about that, but anyways, it's a good segue because we're going to show you Headlamp, so you can make up your mind for yourself as we kind of go through it. I played around with it a little. Steve has not seen it, so be interesting to get your 2 cents on it. But before we get into that, I have my home cluster, as those of you following the show may know, that I have set up basically Rancher, Kubernetes, OpenShift. I have automation for it all. But what I wanted to check out was Civo. So Waleed, you mentioned this earlier of what Civo's doing. I thought it was pretty cool to kind of get it up and running, see how fast I could do it, because I had Headlamp on my home server. And I managed to get Civo up and running, a sock shop demo application, and Headlamp in 30 minutes on a cluster. That's how quick this is. For those of you unaware, Civo is like a cloud platform for Kubernetes, $250 in free credit. It is a lot cheaper than most cloud providers. So let's say, for example, I've been running this for a day now. It's $1.56. I have a current credit balance, very simplistic in terms of the dashboard, really like it. Creating a new cluster. So I just come in, I can do, hey, I want to do, mfoster -1. Now there is like a limit just because I don't have a quota. I'm not a paying customer right now. So they're kind of throttling me a little bit like Google and all the cloud providers do. So let's say I want to do a medium instance for 2 instances. It'll tell me, hey, it's just $16 per month flat, right? To run those. What's great too, so they have Marketplace. And I believe what they use like a Helm plugin, basically. I don't think it's Tiller, but they use Helm to inject these into your app, into your K3s. So yeah, you can say, hey, I want traffic. Right now, metric server normally comes automatically installed, right, for a lot of Kubernetes instances. So yeah, I could say, hey, I want traffic. I've only heard it being called traffic, so I'm just going to go with that. Yeah. Argo CD, Jenkins, like all this stuff can be installed and altered as well. So you can see, hey, you go to the organization, go and download it, or you can fire up your cluster with it already installed. Pretty cool overall. One of the things I really found was interesting. It's kind of like Twitch almost. Launch your cluster, complete the task, check the status now to get the next quest. So we couldn't detect, I haven't scaled the cluster. Okay, let's try this out. Let's go to this. And if I click on my cluster, I can come in here and, hey, do I want to scale it? Yeah, I have 3 large nodes. I think I can get 4. I think let's scale it. Do I have to move this first? Probably. Yeah, okay. So I got a little click heavy there. Scale that.
And then 120 a month.
Yeah. And honestly, like you think about it, if you're just playing around in Kubernetes with $250, and this is like a pretty big cluster, right? Like I don't need this size. I have 16 CPUs. What is that? 32 gigabytes of RAM and 60 gigabytes of storage of node of disk space. So it's pretty sizable. Let's see if I go to KubeQuest. Boom. Pretty cool. Moving on to the next one. So pretty cool if you want to get started and check out Civo. I like the learning path. I like how simple it is. You can go to instances, check out load balancers, manage all your networks, firewalls, DNS, SSH keys, webhooks. There's a CLI. So as part of when you install it, download their CLI either through a curl or brew or anything or something like that. And you basically just say, hey, here's my API key, here's my authorization. And it's very similar to like the Google CLI. You can just pull the credentials, and now I have a context in my kube config file that specifically points to my cluster. So pretty cool, very simple. When I started it up, it basically said, hey, it's 90 seconds for the cluster to initialize. It was pretty spot on in terms of that timing. So very, very interesting. And yeah, so like Willie pointed this out, you have K3s. The not quite. We should double blind review. We don't install it. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they still offer the $250 for new users. Yeah, that's true, Willie. And yeah, okay, so it's 1 month or with 200 free, so it doesn't drag. So I have to use 250 in a month. So gotcha, perfect. Yeah, so pretty simple, and it's just K3s. So it'll be K3s in VMs. I think that's why it runs so fast. Obviously, you're not installing K8s every time. Just a simplified version. Now, moving on to Headlamp. After that was installed and I got the kube config file, the context downloaded with all the keys. Oh, it's definitely getting close to, it's past 5 o'clock for you. So you're good. I heard that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I went to Headlamp and it's like, okay, well, if you use Helm or you use charts, you kind of know how easy it is to install applications on Kubernetes. The configuration can be difficult. So I was kind of thinking like, oh, I'm using K3s. Maybe I might need a specific implementation for it. But what was awesome was you go to the overview in Headlamp and it's like, okay, well, here's how you create a service token and here's how you set this up. But where is the installation? Why can't I find it? Platforms. Here we go. So tested Kubernetes platforms, has been tried, works fine. Hasn't been tried, doesn't work yet. So I'm like, okay, well, K3s, that's what I need. Go to in cluster. Oh, that's where I need to go. So in cluster deployment there. Yeah, and so basically, simple command, you're pulling from the GitHub and you can go and see the YAML. It's a single container, a single YAML. Gives you instructions for exposing Headlamp with an Ingress server. I just opted for node port because I was just like, screw it. Like, let's just do it quick. Don't do that at home. And yeah, so you have a configuration file. If I installed traffic, then I would just use that as the Ingress server and just slightly alter the config file. And again, you can also expose Headlamp through port forwarding. Now, what was interesting is, once it's up and running, you can access it by creating a service account or by setting it up using OIDC. What was really interesting about that, because obviously dashboards are a significant security vulnerability. The first time that I got into it, it requires you to create a service account with cluster admin credentials to then pull a token to then sign in. So it is not something that, like, when the dashboard's up, that anybody can just get into. You have to have cluster credentials in order to pull a token and use it. I thought it was a lot better than, like, let's say you set up a Grafana instance and it's like admin normally, or like you have to inject a password into the YAML. I like that workflow a lot better. And it's almost like setting up like a slight barrier to be like, hey, you need to know how service accounts work and need to have admin in order to do it. So I like that workflow. But yeah, so just to kick on over to it. So I got all this set up and let's go to the cluster level. So I got in, and this is what you see when you first come in. You have some events here. So obviously the top ones are these failed scheduling events. You have some unhealthy things that I need to check on. It looks like I need to check on the stock shop. But we have some requested and 4 that are they just don't really like us today. So we can check more into that. But what I like about this is it gives you, when you think about cluster, one of the first things I do when I get into a cluster is usually like a kubectl, get nodes, kubectl, get namespaces, kubectl, get pods all, right? And it kind of follows that flow of like, hey, I get into the cluster. What are my namespaces? Okay, those are my namespaces. I see them. What are my nodes? Gotcha, right? What are my custom resource definitions? What are my config maps? These two, I'm a little interested in that they're here, but I don't have an issue with them being there. Like, to me, nodes, like your cluster level dashboard, what is like the most, like all the information that you need right there, solid events, letting you know what's going on. Nodes and namespace is pretty simple. Everything's green already. The scope, so we can see that it's namespace scoped. And then we can see all our config maps by namespace as well. Now, one of the other cool things that I liked was the workload definition. Because you tend to see things just by deployment or just by X. It's like, hey, here's a deployment. But then it's like, do people really search for jobs, right? Like, it's not a very, people don't really, or I shouldn't say people, dashboards don't really showcase Kubernetes jobs that well to say, hey, like there's a bunch of cron jobs running. Maybe you need to take a look at these. And if they're completing, how often they run, you can see all that in here. So yeah, again, just sticking with that flow, get nodes, get namespaces, get pods. Here's all your pods. You can see I have 35, which matches the beginning of the dashboard. Obviously, there is why it's not, maybe my computer is having an issue with this. You can filter by namespace. You can search even more, which is great. So nothing running in default. I can go and look at sock shop. Have a couple pending here. And for those of you who are unaware of sock shop, this is sock shop demo application. And these are the colorful socks I decided to pick out today. So yeah, I can add it. Yeah, I know. It's not bad. I can add it to the wish list. Check out my cart. Update basket. Still don't have anything. Sort by color. And yeah, I like to use it. So that's what's running. You can go down, look at replica sets. And again, replica sets are the underlying thing for deployments. So it's like kind of a catch-all for daemon sets, stateful sets, and deployments. But if you wanted to, you can look at specific daemon sets, your stateful sets, which I don't have any because I'm not really running a database or anything like that. No jobs, all my deployments, and cron jobs, no cron jobs. Other thing that's cool is storage. So you can look at storage classes, volumes, persistent volume claims. I like that all three of these are together. So you can see that the storage classes are set up because I specifically said for automated volumes to be set up. The interesting is like there are no volumes. So you could see that all you need to do is basically create a claim or a volume and specifically map it to that storage, and you're automatically going to get it. So pretty interesting like that. From the network side, you have services and you have ingresses. I didn't set up any ingresses, but I do have services, so I can see there's cluster IP. One obvious. The only thing I think that's missing, if I were to add to this network, is I do think that you should be able to search by type, unless maybe I can just do. Yeah, I think that one's missing. Like what I should want to do is, like, I don't really care about cluster IP as much, but I should be, maybe it's because I don't want to sort by that. Yeah, no, it's not coming up. Because really, I kind of want to be like, hey, like what are my load balance servers? What are my node ports? What is exposed, right?
Yeah.
But maybe that's in the security spot. 3D, 2D views. I don't know if they're there yet. That's a good point, Scorpio. Yeah, so we get into security. We have service accounts. We have roles. We have role bindings and secrets. And again, like for this sort function, I feel like anytime there is a type, there should be like a sort function for the type, right? That's, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it'd be useful because it's like, okay, well, these are service account tokens associated with this namespace. I kind of want to be like, what are the opaque tokens or opaque secrets, right? What are the secrets I need to worry about that aren't the defaults? But overall, pretty solid. A lot of this, it's a single container. So from what I gather, all this information is getting pulled from the API, right? It's just querying etcd for any changes. It's not really looking on the node, which is great for security purposes. It's just, hey, Headlamp is just pinging Kubernetes API and etcd for what are the objects there, and it's just organizing all the objects. And then it looks like it's checking metrics server a little bit. And again, like this, if you do a kube control describe pods, you're going to get all that information about what's going on. So you'll be able to say, hey, it's pulled, or it's this, or it's that. All of this can be pulled just with kubectl command. So in terms of the flow, that is my guess for what's going on. And yeah. And oh, look at that. Wait, did it switch? Well, that doesn't really work. We got dark and light mode. I'm on the dark side, as you can tell.
Yes.
All right, Steve, thoughts, first impressions.
It looks so simple that I'm wondering what's missing. That's all. Because I think, well, if you do Octant, or if we do Octant in our head-to-head battle of the dashboards, yeah, I feel like there's more going on there, and now I'm wondering, wait a second, what isn't there? Well, what's it written in? I didn't check.
I haven't checked either.
We just assume it's Go because that's what all the cool kids do.
Well, I mean, the front end probably isn't, right? But
the
query to the API to etcd and Kubernetes API is.
I don't know. Well, I'm just curious because that's we were talking about. Scorpio asked about plugins, and I pasted the plugin link into the chat. Plugins are written in JavaScript.
Oh, interesting.
Which is interesting. Yeah, exactly. So whether that means you can make changes to the appearance or functionality. I know that in Octant, you could kind of do both. You could create your own panels, and you can pull unique information out and extend what you were doing. So if it was possible within JavaScript, which is pretty much anything, then yeah, you can do it. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and they have a desktop version as well, right? Because if you think about it, this is running in your cluster. And I think this is the extensibility that's really important. I'm running this in the cluster. I didn't necessarily have to. I could run it locally and just give it my kube config file. And then all it's doing is just pulling information from my cluster, right? So I think in terms of the functionality for developers, it might just be, hey, like I run this locally and I have my little, maybe my V cluster that's a cluster in a cluster, and I just want to ping it, right? So it's just, hey, give me this information. Let me see what's going on in the cluster. I see all the basic events. So I think it's really useful for that core use case. For something like Civo for small clusters, I would somewhat, how does it scale? How does it look at multiple clusters? Is it able to? I haven't got that far into functionality, but yes, can be shared with Octant's just local. Octant has plugins. Yep. Yeah, we'll leads on point with this. Yeah. Overall, honestly, a painless experience, which is what I love. I think that's so important for dashboards and just tools in general in Kubernetes is, hey, here's all the documentation that you need. Here's how you get started. Here's how you log in. Everything is just out in the open. So I think it's a great job. And yeah, it's really shining a light, if you know what I mean.
There he goes again.
All right, I'm fired.